I knew nothing about the Lord of the Rings until I saw the first movie with some friends. Like when we're going to the theater, I thought, the Fellowship of the Ring, we're going to see some rom-com? Like we're a bunch of college guys. That seems weird that we're gonna do that, right? Like I'd never heard of Lord of the Rings at all until I'm walking in the theater to see the first movie. And then while I was watching that marathon of the movie, I was thinking, they better hurry up. They got a lot of plot holes to fill. I mean, we're already pushing 2.5 hours with this bad boy. And then the movie just ended. It just ended. And I thought, how dumb was that? Like they just left so many things wide open. That's not even ending the movie. What a dumb way to end the movie. And my friends had to tell me, Matt, that's the end of the first movie, but it's not the end of the story. It's a trilogy. Oh, okay, well that makes some more sense. I mean, if you think the first movie is the entire story, you're gonna be really frustrated and disappointed. But if you watch the first movie in the context of the entire Lord of the Rings story, now it makes sense. You can see how it's setting everything up, how pieces are being moved into place, how certain things are gonna cause ripple effects later on. You know that there's more to come. There's more to the story. And that's true in all different areas of life. As a parent, if you are a parent, at some point you learn that when your kids tell you something, there's a good chance there's more to the story. Y'all experienced this, right? Really? That's how it broke? Are you sure you don't want to tell me more? Or another example, totally different example. The Broncos this year. Through the first 3 quarters, you're ready to lose your mind, are you not? Completely frustrated, I'm giving up, and then somehow every game, this team comes to life in the 4th quarter and they win. Like you know with the Broncos this year, through 3 quarters, there's more to the story with this team. Or with the algorithm. Like I think all of us know now that news no longer exists. It's just entertainment and propaganda, that's what it is. And we know that whatever's fed to us on our phones, we know there's more to the story. Here's why all of this matters. If you look at just part of a story, then you're gonna get frustrated, disappointed. You might get discouraged depending on the situation. You're probably gonna make rash decisions based off partial information. If you look at just part of a story, then you're not gonna know what the story really is. But if you know that there's more to it, that makes it a whole lot easier to start trusting that God is working even when you can't see him. Esther's a great example of this. I mean, how this Jewish girl become the queen of Persia? Like that's impossible. How did that even happen? Why does it matter? It matters because there's more to the story. God's moving pieces into place. So if this is your first time here, we're in a series right now, walking through the book of Esther. You can catch any of it online if you've missed any of it. Today, we're gonna dive into some of the nuance of the story. I want you to see how God works in story. This is Esther chapter 2, starting in verse 21. One day, as Mordecai was on duty at the king's gate, 2 of the king's eunuchs, Bigthana and Teresh, would you like to have those names, who were guards at the door of the king's private quarters, they became very angry with King Xerxes and plotted to assassinate him. But Mordecai heard about the plot, and he gave the information to Queen Esther. She then told the king about it and gave Mordecai the credit for the report. When an investigation was made and Mordecai's story was found to be true, the 2 men were impaled on a sharpened pole. Like, talk about taking care of something. This was all recorded in the book of history of King Xerxes' reign. So Mordecai discovers and exposes a plot to assassinate Xerxes because that's what God's people do. Ephesians 5:11 actually says, take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. It's exactly what he did. But when you expose darkness, it can be risky for sure, but it's always right. Eventually, it will be remembered by man. It most definitely will be remembered by God. So Xerxes uncovers this plot. He saves the king's life. That's a pretty legit story right there. You would think that you could end the book of Esther right there. But this is just a story within the story. There's still more to come. Persian kings were known. They were known to generously reward loyalty. So you would think that right now, Xerxes is gonna take care of Mordecai. He's gonna reward him, he's gonna bless him, he's gonna set him up for life because he just saved his life. But that's not what happened. In fact, nothing happened at all. no thank you, no reward, not even a Starbucks gift card. And it seems pretty typical, right? Mordecai does something great and he completely gets overlooked, blown off, overlooked. And maybe you feel the same way. Like right now, maybe you're going through something where, hey man, I'm working hard. I'm not cutting corners like these other people are. I'm selflessly trying to help these people. I'm making this dude look like an all-star and nothing. No thank you, no reward, nothing. I'm overlooked. I bet we've all felt that way at some point in life. And if you haven't, you will at some point. But Mordecai being overlooked, it's actually God's providence. Even if you feel like you're being overlooked, it doesn't mean that God isn't working. In fact, sometimes if you feel like you're overlooked, that might mean because God is working. So Mordecai is not rewarded now, but he will be remembered later at a much more crucial time when it matters much more because something else has to happen in the story first. This is Esther 3. I'm gonna read a big chunk of this. You can follow in your Bible. If you don't have one, stop by info. We would love to give you a Bible. We'll also have it up on the screens. Verse 1. Sometime later, King Xerxes promoted Haman the Agagite over all the other nobles, making him the most powerful official in the empire. All the king's officials would bow down before Haman to show him respect whenever he passed by, for so the king commanded. But Mordecai refused to bow down and show him respect. Then the palace officials at the king's gate asked Mordecai, hey bro, why are you disobeying the king's command? They spoke to him day after day about this, but still he refused to comply with the order. So they spoke to Haman about this, to see if he would tolerate Mordecai's conduct, since Mordecai had told them he was a Jew. That's an important detail for later. When Haman saw that Mordecai would not bow down or show him respect, he was filled with rage. He learned that Mordecai's nationality, so he decided it was not enough to lay hands on Mordecai alone. Instead, he looked for a way to destroy all of the Jews throughout the entire empire of Xerxes. Verse 8. Then Haman approached Xerxes and said, hey, there is a certain race of people scattered all over the provinces of your empire who keep themselves separate from everyone else. Their laws are different from those of any other people, and they refuse to obey the laws of the king. So it's not in the king's interest to let them live. If it pleases the king, issue a decree that they be destroyed. And I will give 10,000 large sacks of silver to the government administrators to be deposited in the royal treasury. Just proves you can buy power. The king agreed, confirming his decision by removing his signet ring from his finger and giving it to Haman the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews. So Xerxes agrees with this. A law is sent out through the entire empire. That stretches from Ethiopia to India. Massive. And here's what it says, verse 13. Dispatches were sent with swift messengers to all the provinces of the empire, giving the order that all Jews, young and old, including women and children, must be killed, slaughtered, and annihilated in one single day. This was scheduled to happen on March 7th of the next year. The property of the Jews would be given to those who killed them. Verse 15. Then the king and Haman, they sat down to drink. That's a lot. So Haman wants to, and he has a plot to kill every single Jew in the entire empire. That sounds a whole lot like the Nazis' final solution to what they called the Jewish question. Looks like they took a play out of Haman's playbook. 2,500 years earlier, Haman was Hitler. It says that he's the enemy of the Jews. And for good reason. He had a plot to kill, slaughter, and annihilate all of them in one single day and then steal all their stuff. The parallels between Haman's plot and the Holocaust of the 1930s and 40s, the parallels between those two things are beyond obvious. The enemy of the Jews, that's Haman. Well, Jesus actually calls Satan the enemy. Calls him the enemy or the thief. In John 10, Jesus says that the enemy, the thief, comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Is that not exactly what Haman's plot was? Verbatim. Then Haman makes his case against God's people to Xerxes. He says, Xerxes, there's a people that are scattered all over your empire. There's Christians scattered all over northern Colorado. They're different, Xerxes, from everybody else. We are supposed to be different from everybody else. We should look different for the right reasons. We should look like Jesus to everybody else. Hey, Xerxes, they don't keep your laws. They don't keep your laws at all. We don't bow down and submit to whatever popular culture dictates in the moment. Xerxes, it's not in your best interest to let them live. It's not in your best interest to tolerate them at all. When our culture preaches tolerance, what it really is a demand for conformity. And when God's people will not conform with things that are not compatible with God, His word, and the gospel, culture will look at us and say, I don't know if it's in our best interest to have you around. Now, they may not try to kill us. I certainly hope not. But that's a real thing that's happened throughout history, and it's going on to this day right now in different parts of the world. Instead, it might be, hey, let's isolate them by alienating them. Let's silence this people. Let's cancel them. The tactics to destroy God's people, they may be totally different than what Haman's were, but the spirit of Haman is alive and well today. Why? I mean, was it really because this one dude felt disrespected? It's to kill an entire people group. I mean, that seems like a little much just because you felt like you were disrespected by one guy. I mean, Haman says, it's not in your best interest, Xerxes, to keep them around. Other translations actually say, it will not profit you, my king, if you keep them around. But that wasn't true at all. It wasn't true at all. People are profitable to an empire. 1, critical mass. 2, you've got more labor contributing to the economy. 3, you've got more men for the army. That was a really big deal. And 4, empires were known just to make people slaves if they wanted to. There were plenty of ways to make these people profitable for the king, so why say get rid of them? It's because they were a threat. Haman's incredibly self-focused, and he's very mentally weak. You'll see that throughout Esther. But what he really wanted to do was not just kill Mordecai. He wanted to kill what Mordecai represented. Mordecai represented the one true God who is only worthy of honor and glory, the glory and honor that Haman wanted for himself. So Mordecai is now a source of conviction to Haman, so he wants to kill conviction. He wants to kill truth that goes against what he wants. He wants to get rid of the light. He wanted to get rid of the dude that stood for and stood with God. That's why he wanted to get rid of all of the Jews, all of God's people. He wanted to get rid of all of them because he saw them as a threat. They represented the God he wanted to destroy. They represented the light, and the light is always a threat to darkness, always. Jesus said, I am the light of the world. Historically, the Jews were God's chosen people to bring the Messiah through, to bring the light through. Jesus had to have a nation, a people group to come through. God chose the Jews to do that. If Haman succeeds, now Jesus doesn't have a people group to come through, and God's previous promises are all broken. That's what's going on. He's trying to get rid of all of that. And there's actually more evil. As horrific as it is to try to kill an entire people, there's even more going on, more evil going on with this plan. Haman's plot was actually trying to get rid and deny all of humanity, past, present, and future, deny all of humanity, the Son of God coming in to take away the sins of the world. That's what's going on. It's the darkness trying to prevent the light from ever coming. That's why Haman's plan is demonic. The enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Destroy what? In this case, destroy God's total plan for grace. Destroy God's plan for redemption. Destroy God's plan for reconciliation that will come through Jesus. Destroy it before it ever has the chance to happen. That's what's going on at a much deeper level in this story. This dude is jacked up, for sure. I mean, talk about a villain. And sometimes when you're introduced to a villain like this, in any kind of story, it's easy to kind of just bypass right over the top of a villain. Yeah, that guy's messed up, but let's move on to something else. I can't relate to him or her. I can't be like him or her. I'm not going to learn anything from that. Hey, why don't we talk about Esther and Mordecai again? I can relate to them. I can be more like them. I understand that. I heard psychologist Jordan Peterson talk about this. He said, everybody likes to think that they are Oscar Schindler. Nobody thinks that they're Hitler. So true. Man, I want to be Schindler. I'm not going to be like Haman, at least I hope not. But if you and I think that the same kind of sin cannot lurk inside of us, That's a very dangerous attitude to have. So this week, looking through this, the question I was asking myself, it's gonna sound a little crazy, it might even sound a little dark, but here's the question. How much of Haman do I have in me? Do I want to control people like Haman? Do I feel threatened? Am I insecure if people don't appreciate me the way I think I should be? Do I want revenge if I'm offended or if my pride gets hurt? How much of Haman do I have in me? That stuff is small, but all of us have felt that way before. Maybe I want a little bit more control. Maybe I'm insecure. Maybe I feel threatened. I'm not being appreciated. Man, I want to come after that person that offended me. I want to get back at that person that hurt me. All of us can feel that way before. It's small, but that's where it starts. Just like the Amalekites in Deuteronomy 25, it said they had no fear of God whatsoever. That's exactly where it starts. That's what leads to being like Haman. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. No fear of the Lord, that's the beginning of a fall. And everybody, including you and I, we're all capable of that. But why didn't Mordecai just bow down and show this guy some respect? Why didn't he do that? That wasn't uncommon for other nations to show other government officials respect in ancient times. That wasn't uncommon at all. And in fact, if he would have just bowed down and showed the dude some respect, we wouldn't be in this whole mess, right? Well, there's more to the story. And Mordecai knows what's going on. And to see it, we have to understand who Haman is. We're introduced to Haman as Haman the Agagite. That's a really important detail. And to understand it, we have to go all the way back to Exodus 17. This is right after Israel is released from 400 years of slavery in Egypt. This is right after they leave Egypt. It's right after God parts the Red Sea. Right after that, the Amalekites, they attack the Israelites. The great news is the Israelites won that fight. The bad news is it wasn't going to be the only fight. So later on in Deuteronomy 25, Moses says this. He says, hey, when the Lord your God has given you rest from all your enemies in the land that he's giving you as a special possession, you must destroy the Amalekites and erase their memory from under heaven. Never forget this. That's pretty intense. He's actually talking about what King Saul is going to be called to do almost 500 years later. That's a big deal. So who are these people then? The Amalekites were a fierce nomadic tribe that stayed mostly in the desert region around the Dead Sea. These guys were guerrilla terrorists. That's who they were. They were guerrilla terrorists. They would live by attacking other people. They would steal money, steal their livestock, even steal their families. When they would make raids, the Amalekites were known to kill for pleasure. Let's just simply kill for pleasure. Hunger Games type stuff, like just creepy, messed up stuff. They would just kill because they wanted to. So when they would raid, it was for profit, for pleasure, and for people. They would literally steal people. These people were pirates on land. Later on in Exodus 17, it says, God says this about the Amalekites. They have raised their fist against the Lord's throne. So now the Lord will be at war with the Amalekites for generation after generation, because the Amalekites, they were hell-bent on the annihilation of Israel. So then fast forward a few centuries to King Saul, Israel's very first king. We're still centuries away from Esther. God says to Saul, enough is enough. I'm done with the Amalekites. Their time is up. This is an evil and wicked people. I've given them chances. I'm done with them. Here's what I want you to do. This is 1 Samuel 15. This is what the Lord of Heaven's armies has declared. I've decided to settle the accounts with the nation of Amalek for opposing Israel when they came from Egypt. Now, go completely destroy the entire Amalekite nation. That's intense. So Saul goes to war. He goes and fights these guys, and he wins. And he comes back and says, I did it. We're good to go. I took them all out. We don't ever have to worry about these people again. Except he didn't. Either there were people that got away and escaped and Saul didn't know about it, or Saul lied about it. Because the Amalekites are going to show up again and again and again. King David, he's got to fight them multiple times. One time, they had just gotten done, the Amalekites, they burned down an entire city, then they raided David's camp when he wasn't there, and they stole all of the wives and children. David's own wife was stolen by the Amalekites. Can you imagine how terrifying that would be? The good news is David and his boys, they tracked them down, that band of raiders, and they got their wives and kids back. Saul, he's gonna have another run in. Saul gets wounded in a battle with the Philistines, and there's a guy that just shows up on the scene that ends up taking Saul out and finishing him off. Do you know who it was? It was an Amalekite. Don't miss the irony in that. The people that Saul was supposed to take out end up taking Saul out. And then there's King Agag. In 1 Samuel 15, God says, Saul, get rid of all of them. But Saul leaves alive. He spares their king, King Agag. Do you know who a direct descendant of King Agag is? Haman. The man who's trying to kill all of the Jews, including Mordecai and Esther, is a direct descendant of the king and the people Saul didn't take care of. If Saul just would have obeyed God, Haman wouldn't exist, nor would his plot. So here's the truth for us to know. Disobedience now becomes a much bigger problem later. Because there's something right now that you're just disobeying God with. Could be big, could be small, I don't like for whatever reason. Maybe it's because you're afraid, like, hey man, I don't know, like if I obey with this, like, I don't know what it's gonna cost me. What will it cost you if you don't? Or maybe you don't want to obey God on something because you just don't want to, or it makes you uncomfortable, or you're putting it off. Whatever it is, hear me on this. Like, this is gonna be something that we need to know our entire lives. Disobedience now becomes a much bigger problem later. For Saul, his disobedience actually led to his downfall and his death, and his disobedience created a massive problem for Esther, for Mordecai, and for all of the Jews. Mordecai is well aware of this. Like, he knows exactly who Haman is. Here's a guy who's an ancestor of the people who always wanted to annihilate the Jews. Of course I'm not gonna bow down to him. It would have been like a Jew bowing down to a Nazi today. The same thing. And there's one more piece of information, a detail that we have to see. In Esther 2:5, it says that Mordecai is a son of, a descendant of Kish. Kish was Saul's father. Mordecai is a direct descendant of Saul. He comes from his family. He's well aware of the Amalekites and what they've done. Great, here's another Amalekite trying to kill God's people. Why would I bow down for that fool? And he also knows the disastrous disobedience of his family before him. He's not gonna bow down and create the same mistake that his family did before him. I think that's why he refused to bow. I know who Haman really is, I know who that guy really is, and I'm not gonna make the same mistake that my family before me did. But here's the great news in all of it, in any story. God will always accomplish his purposes, always. Always. And God will choose to use people who choose to stand and obey with him. Saul chose not to. Esther and Mordecai, they will. So behind the scenes in this story, there's one more piece that you have to know, that we all have to remember. The greater the threat, the greater the act from God behind the scenes. God has this amazing track record. He has this amazing track record of taking evil plans and blowing them up in the faces of people that planned them. God's just setting the stage right now in this part of the story. Like Haman and Xerxes, they think it's done. At the end of chapter 3, they sit down to have a drink. Let's celebrate, bro. Cheers. We took care of this. They thought they got rid of the people that Jesus would come from before Jesus even showed up on the scene. And these two guys sitting down to have a drink and celebrate, that sounds an awful lot like Herod and Pilate sitting down together right after they condemned Jesus to the cross. In Luke 23:12, it says that Herod and Pilate, they had been enemies, but became good friends that very day. What Haman and Xerxes couldn't accomplish, Herod and Pilate thought they did accomplish until the resurrection happened. Because there's always more to the story. Always. This part of Esther is a story within the story that's within the story. God is always working even when you can't see him. And sometimes that means he's solving problems before the problems themselves even show up. The whole thing about Mordecai exposing an assassination plot, that wasn't random. That was so that God could solve the problem of Haman before Haman even showed up on the scene. You're gonna see it play out. The history between the Israelites and the Amalekites, that's background for part of Esther's story, and Esther's story is part of God's overarching story to send Jesus to reconcile and redeem the world through his life, death, and resurrection. That's the entire Bible. All of these stories coming together to form the greatest story, all pointing to Jesus. And the same thing works with your life. Whatever's going on with you right now, maybe you're in a great spot, maybe things feel like a dumpster fire, maybe it's just neutral. Whatever's going on with you right now is a story within your story. God is working even if you can't see him. And right now for you, maybe God is solving problems that haven't even showed up yet. Maybe that's why you feel like he's quiet or distant, because he's working right now. Man, I just want to feel God. I want to be close to him. I don't feel like I can hear him. When a teacher gives a test, that's when a teacher is the quietest, right? The same thing is true with Jesus. Like sometimes when he feels like he's really quiet and he's not there, he might actually be the closest. Testing with the Lord isn't, he's not testing you to see if you passed. Testing is always trying to form you and shape you. Sometimes the teacher is quietest during the test. Maybe that's going on right now. God's solving problems that haven't even showed up yet. Or if you feel like you're being overlooked, don't be discouraged. That might be God working. If you are following Christ, you will never be overlooked by God. You'll be overlooked by man for sure. That'll happen all the time. But you're never going to be overlooked by the Lord. Whatever's going on with you right now is a story within your story. God works in story. And if he prevented something awful like a Holocaust in the Persian Empire 2,500 years ago, if he did that, think about all the awful things that God is preventing right now that we don't know anything about. If he did it then, he's doing it now. Even though there's jacked up stuff going on in the world for sure right now, if he did it then, he's doing it now. We can trust that because of this. Whatever's going on with you, just remember, there's always going to be more to your story. And the Lord of heaven and earth will work in your story until Jesus comes back or you go home, whichever one comes first. Let's pray. Father, thank you for giving us a story. Thank you for the greatest story the world's ever heard. Your son taking on human flesh, living a perfect life for us, then dying and then raising from the dead so that we could be redeemed and reconciled back to you and spend eternity with you. But not just wait for that, but we get to have the kingdom right now. Father, like you know where all of us are at in the room right now, everybody that's online, all of us have a different story going on right now. You know exactly what it is. So I just ask that you would meet us where we're at, that you would give us courage to step out in faith and follow you, that you would give us courage to obey you. If it's to respond to your son for the very first time, give us the courage and faith to do that. Would you give us peace that you're working even if we don't hear you or feel you right now, that we can trust you, that you are providential, that you are sovereign, that you are working when we can't see it. I also ask, God, would you just give everybody in here, would you give us all vision to look back and let us be able to see how you were working in the past so that we can trust you right now and in the future. We do, just give us courage, give us more faith, help us to follow you in obedience. We love you. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.